should we be selecting females for efficiency? And by selecting for efficiency, how is that affecting the performance of the calves and their reproductive performance? And second, I'm going to address the debate that's been in the beef industry for the last few years, and that's how heavy do we want to develop our heifers at breeding? For many years, we've promoted 65% of estimated mature body weight, and recently there's been some talk of 55%, so we'll discuss that a little bit. But hopefully we can come to a consensus on what to use. Who here set a New Year's resolution? Anybody? Nobody did a New Year's resolution. Okay. Well, this one's a lot like mine. When you're with the beef team, you have to limit the bad decisions you make because we can sometimes get a little wild and crazy. But we always set goals for our operations, right? And set goals for where we want to be next year. And just like that, we need to set goals for our beef heifers. My goal this year is I want to ride a bear. I don't know where I'm going to accomplish that, but actually this is in honor of the Olympics. If you took my picture, that'd be Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, and so I put that up there. I don't know if that crazy bastard actually has ridden a bear. It wouldn't surprise me, but anyway. So let's talk about goals for our replacement heifers. Number one goal, we wanted to reach puberty by 13 months of age. Okay, of course we have to get them in puberty so they get pregnant. Why 13 months of age? Well, we'd like to get them pregnant by 15 months of age so they can have a 2-year-old. So if we can get them pubertal by 13 months of age, they can have a couple ester cycles prior to the beginning of the breeding season, and we know that improves their opportunity to get pregnant early. Yes, sir?
When's a good time to repro check?
To repro track check? Well, we had this conversation at Pipestone, I believe, or one of the locations. If you're using it as it's intended to be used and are actually willing to cull the animals that don't pass, probably about anywhere from 45 days to, right up to the breeding season. You know, at 13 months, if you go in and repro track score, ideally about 70% of your heifers should be, well, maybe not 70%, but over 50% of your heifers should be a repro track score of 3 or greater. And that would be a time if you've got a bunch of 1s and 2s, especially the 1s, if they're still a 1 at that stage, get them out. So if you're repro track scoring, you know, that's the time to do it. You can wait to right up to breeding, and we do that sometimes with synchronization systems. To wait right up to when we start the breeding season, but then what can you do? You're just getting rid of them. If you do it a little bit before, okay, if you've got a lot of 3s, maybe I bump them up a little bit going into breeding, see if I can get some of them cycling before we get to breeding. The numbers for anybody, if you're not familiar with repro track scoring, it's a number system 1 to 5. You'll have a veterinarian or somebody trained, they'll go in and they'll palpate the uterus and ovaries to feel what's on. It's an estimate of sexual maturation. 1 is a heifer that's a long ways from reaching puberty. 5 is a heifer that's reached puberty, and then numbers in between there indicate how big the uterus is, what kind of structures are on the ovary, and so forth. And so it's just an estimation of how that sexually developed those heifers are. Number 2, we want them to conceive by 15 months of age. And one of the things we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today is not just conceiving within the breeding season, but when they do conceive within the breeding season. A lot of times, what's your average breeding season for your heifers? 60 days? Anybody less than 60? Down to 45? You know, so it's not necessarily that they conceive in that 45 to 60 day window. That's important, yes. But do they conceive early? Are they in the first 20 days, the second 20 days? And I'll share some data why that's so important. And as we talk about the 2 other topics, both efficiency and target weight, that becomes very critical. Of course, nobody here likes pulling calves. If you do, you're sick and twisted. But so we want to try to minimize the number of calves that we need to have to pull. We can do that a couple ways. Number 1 is genetics. You know, make sure we know what we're breeding our heifers to. EPDs are great there, so we can get a bull that has cavities and low birth weights. Number 2 is proper development. At calving, they should be about 85% of their estimated mature body weight. But we don't want overly undeveloped heifers or overly fat heifers. Fat heifers are just as hard to calve as underdeveloped heifers, so think about that. Of course, we spent all this time getting this heifer to have her first calf. We didn't sell her at weaning, we fed her, we want her to get rebred. And we want her to stay in the herd. And so how we develop that heifer prior to her first conception can influence this. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Once they enter our cow herd, we want to maintain a 365-day calving interval. We want them to have a calf every year. And that's pretty important for economics. And lastly, longevity in the herd. We want them to stay in the herd as long as possible in most scenarios. Now, some of our purebred producers wanting to shorten their generation interval and improve genetic progress might cull them out sooner, but most of our commercial cow-calf guys, you want that cow 12, 13 years old because she's making money out there.